The sun hung low in the sky as I stood in my living room, the late afternoon light spilling through the sheer curtains, casting soft shadows across the floor. I absentmindedly straightened the throw pillows on the couch, trying to make the space feel more inviting, even though I knew it was just me here. Tom had left for his business trip early that morning, and the house felt achingly empty without him. I had always believed that absence made the heart grow fonder, but today it only deepened the sense of loneliness that had been creeping in for months. Maybe I should call him, I muttered to myself, glancing at my phone, which lay silent on the coffee table. My thumb hovered over his contact, but I hesitated. What would I say? Hey, honey, I miss you? It felt too trivial, too small compared to the growing chasm I felt between us. I sighed and turned my attention back to the room, focusing on the mundane tasks at hand instead of the tumult of emotions swirling within me. As I picked up a stray magazine, my thoughts drifted to our last conversation. Tom had been preoccupied, his mind clearly elsewhere, juggling work commitments and deadlines. I couldn't remember the last time we had a heartfelt conversation, one that didn't revolve around bills or grocery lists. The idea that he was spending time with clients while I was here, feeling so unfulfilled, gnawed at me. I tossed the magazine onto the table with more force than necessary, frustration bubbling to the surface. Just then, a knock at the door startled me. I paused, my heart racing slightly, then made my way to answer it. Peeking through the peephole, I saw Jake, our charming neighbor, standing there with a casual smile, his dark hair catching the light in a way that made him look effortlessly handsome. He was friendly and easygoing, always quick with a joke or a smile. I opened the door, trying to suppress the flutter of nerves in my stomach. Hey, Sarah. Sorry to bother you, but I was wondering if you had that book on gardening I lent you a while back. Jake's voice was warm, and I couldn't help but smile back. Yeah, I think I do. Come in, let me grab it for you. I stepped aside, allowing him to enter. The air felt charged as he crossed the threshold, and I suddenly became acutely aware of how I looked in my cozy, yet slightly frumpy, loungewear. I hope I'm not interrupting your day, he said, glancing around the living room, his eyes lingering on the disarray I had been trying to tidy up. No, not at all. Just trying to keep busy, I replied, my voice slightly higher than usual. I moved to the bookshelf, my heart racing as I searched for the book. I've been meaning to read it again, anyway. It's one of my favorites. Jake stepped closer, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, his presence somehow both comforting and electrifying. You know, I always thought you had a knack for gardening. Your flowers in the front yard are stunning. I felt a blush creeping up my cheeks. Thanks, I just try to keep them alive. We shared a laugh, the kind that felt like it lingered in the air longer than necessary. For a moment, the weight of my loneliness faded, and I found myself leaning into the conversation, drawn in by his charm. Maybe I should take some tips from you, he said, his tone playful. I can't keep a succulent alive to save my life. Really? That's impressive, I teased, putting my hands on my hips. I thought succulents were supposed to be the easiest plants to care for. Not for me, apparently, he chuckled, and I noticed the way his eyes sparkled with mischief. In that brief exchange, something shifted. I could feel an unspoken connection, a chemistry that was both exhilarating and terrifying. My heart raced, and I suddenly felt overly aware of the fact that I was home alone, standing inches away from a man who wasn't my husband. Hey, I should let you get back to your day, Jake said, breaking the moment. Thanks for the book, Sarah. I really appreciate it. Of course, anytime. I called after him as he headed toward the door, my heart still pounding in my chest. As the door clicked shut behind him, I leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. A whirlwind of emotions surged through me, excitement, guilt, confusion. I shook my head, trying to dispel the strange exhilaration that had taken root. Was I really feeling this way over Jake? It felt wrong, yet at the same time, I couldn't ignore the thrill that shot through me. I wandered back into the living room, my thoughts racing. Maybe I had been too harsh on Tom. Maybe this was just a fleeting moment of excitement in an otherwise stagnant life. But the warmth of Jake's presence lingered, and I couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to feel that way more often. The next day dawned brighter than I expected, but the warmth of the sun did little to ease the storm of emotions brewing inside me. My heart raced at the thought of Jake returning. I had replayed our previous encounter in my mind countless times, each moment more intoxicating than the last. As I prepared for his visit, I busied myself in the kitchen, the smell of freshly baked cookies wafting through the air, a distraction that did little to settle my nerves. A sudden knock at the door jolted me from my thoughts. I opened it to find Jake standing there, a playful smile lighting up his face, a plate of cookies in hand. "I brought you a little thank you gift," he said, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "I figured you might need a sugar rush after my last visit." "Cookies?" I replied, unable to suppress a grin. "You're too kind." "Commune." As he stepped inside, I felt an electric charge in the air, an unspoken tension that made my heart flutter. I gestured toward the kitchen table, where I had set out my own batch of cookies. "I baked some, too, so it's cookie overload today." Jake chuckled, his laughter warm and inviting. "I can handle that. I'm a cookie fiend." He took a seat, and as we began to talk, the conversation flowed effortlessly. We bantered back and forth, sharing stories about our lives, our dreams, everything I had longed to share with someone who truly listened. "You know," Jake said, leaning back in his chair, "I've lived next door to you for years, but I never really got to know you until now. It's surprising how we can be so close yet so far apart." I felt a flush creep up my cheeks. "Yeah, I guess we've both been busy with our lives. It's easy to let time slip away." "Speaking of time," he continued, "what's it like being married? I mean, really?" His question caught me off guard. I hesitated, the weight of my reality pressing down on me. "It's complicated. Tom works a lot, and sometimes I feel like we're just going through the motions." Jake nodded, his expression sympathetic. "I get that. My marriage has had its ups and downs, too. It's hard to keep the spark alive when life gets in the way." I swallowed hard, feeling an unexpected kinship with him. It can be lonely, like you're just waiting for something to change. As the conversation deepened, I felt a warmth spreading through me, a connection that seemed to transcend the boundaries of mere friendship. But then my phone buzzed on the table, jolting me back to reality. I glanced at the screen. Tom had sent a text. "Hey, how's everything going? Hope you're doing okay." A pang of guilt twisted in my stomach. I quickly set my phone aside, trying to shake off the feeling. "Just the husband checking in," I said, forcing a laugh. "You know how it is." "Yeah, I do," Jake said, his gaze piercing, as if he could read my thoughts. "But it's important to take care of yourself too, right?" "Right," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's just hard sometimes." As we continued to talk, I could feel the chemistry between us growing, palpable, and undeniable. I couldn't help but notice how he leaned in when he spoke, how his eyes sparkled with interest, making me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in ages. The conversation flowed seamlessly from one topic to another, laughter punctuating our exchanges. And for a moment, the world outside faded away. But as our time together began to wind down, reality crept back in. I knew I couldn't ignore the implications of what was happening. As we stood by the door, ready to part ways, Jake leaned in closer, his voice low and teasing. "I really enjoy spending time with you, Sarah. It's refreshing. My heart raced at his compliment, and I felt a dizzying mix of exhilaration and fear. Thanks, Jake. I enjoyed too, but I really shouldn't. Why not? He asked, his gaze unwavering. Sometimes it's okay to have a little fun, to explore what's out there. His words hung in the air, heavy with possibilities. I opened my mouth to respond, but all that came out was a breathless laugh. I felt a rush of warmth as he stepped back, giving me space, though the air still buzzed with unspoken tension. Take care, Sarah, he said softly, that charming smile returning. I'll see you around. As I closed the door behind him, my heart raced, a whirlwind of confusion and excitement swirling within me. I stood there for a moment, leaning against the door, trying to process what had just happened. The thrill of his words lingered, but so did the weight of my reality. I felt exhilarated yet conflicted, balancing on a tightrope between desire and duty. As the sun slipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I found myself nervously arranging the table for dinner. My heart raced at the thought of Jake coming over. It felt both exciting and terrifying. I glanced at the clock, willing it to move faster. When I heard a knock at the door, I jumped, my heart pounding with anticipation. Hey, Sarah. Jake greeted me with that disarming smile that made my stomach flutter. He stepped inside, and I caught a whiff of his cologne, a mix of cedar wood, and something fresh that was uniquely him. Wow, this looks amazing, he said, admiring the candlelit dining table. Thanks. I thought it would be nice to have a proper dinner. I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. As we settled in, the conversation flowed easily, just as it had the previous times we'd met. We swapped stories about our childhoods, and the laughter came naturally, warming the atmosphere between us. Did I tell you I once tried to ride my bike down a hill and ended up in a bush? He chuckled, wiping a tear of laughter from the corner of his eye. I could picture the scene vividly, and I found myself laughing along with him. I can just imagine that, I said, leaning forward, fully engaged. I once climbed a tree to impress a boy and got stuck. My dad had to come rescue me. Impressive, Jake teased, raising his eyebrows. I bet the boy was amazed. He never spoke to me again, I admitted with a playful sigh. But I think I survived. As the evening progressed, the air thickened with an unspoken tension. We shared meal after meal, and with each passing moment, I felt our connection deepening. There was a vulnerability in our exchanges, a shared understanding of loneliness that seemed to bind us closer together. So, how's your marriage? Jake suddenly asked, his tone shifting slightly. The question hung in the air, heavy and charged. It's complicated, I said, biting my lip. Tom's been busy with work, and I feel like we're just going through the motions. It's not what I imagined when we first got married. Jake nodded, a look of empathy crossing his face. I get that. My marriage isn't perfect either. Sometimes it feels like we're just roommates coexisting but not really living. His honesty struck a chord within me, and I found myself leaning in closer, drawn to his candor. What do you do when you feel that way? I asked, genuinely curious. He sighed, the weight of his words palpable. I try to communicate, but it's tough. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth fighting for. And then I meet someone who makes me feel alive, like all of this. He gestured around. Isn't all there is. I felt my heart race at his words, understanding more than he knew. Yeah, I know what you mean, I murmured, feeling a mix of excitement and dread. It's hard to find that spark. Just then, my phone buzzed on the table, shattering the moment. I glanced at the screen and saw Tom's name flash before me. My heart sank. Is everything okay? Jake asked, his brow furrowing slightly as he noticed my expression. It's just Tom, I replied, my voice faltering. He's checking in. Do you want to take it? Jake's eyes searched mine, concern etched on his face. "No, it can wait," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. But even as I said it, I felt the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I wanted to be here with Jake, to explore whatever this was between us, but I could almost hear my conscience shouting at me to remember my vows, my responsibilities. We lapsed into silence, the air thick with tension and unspoken words. I could feel Jake's gaze on me, and it ignited something deep inside. I wanted to reach out, to close the distance between us, but the phone buzzed again, reminding me of the life I had committed to, one that felt increasingly distant. "Sarah?" Jake's voice broke through my thoughts, soft and inviting. "I don't want to complicate things for you, but..." I took a deep breath, torn between desire and duty. "I know, Jake. I need to figure things out." He nodded, and for a brief moment, our eyes locked, the intimacy of the moment hanging in the balance. I could feel the world around us fading, but the text from Tom felt like a tether pulling me back to reality. As I glanced at my phone again, a wave of anxiety washed over me. I was standing at a crossroads, and the choice I made tonight would have consequences I couldn't yet understand. As I stood in the living room, my heart raced as I heard the unmistakable sound of the front door opening. Tom had returned home earlier than expected, and a knot of anxiety twisted in my stomach. I quickly adjusted my posture, smoothing my hair back, as if it would somehow erase the confusion swirling inside me. "Hey, honey, I'm back," he called out, his voice cheerful. I forced a smile, trying to mask the turmoil within. "Welcome home, babe. How was your trip?" My voice felt strained, as if I were straining to hold back a flood of emotions. "It was good, but exhausting. I missed you," he said, stepping into the living room. He looked different, more mature perhaps, but the same warmth radiated from him. I felt an ache of guilt wash over me. How could I feel this way when he was standing right in front of me? As Tom settled in, I busied myself in the kitchen, trying to distract my racing thoughts. It was in that moment that I heard a knock at the door. My heart skipped a beat. I knew who it was. Jake. I glanced back at Tom, who was rummaging through his suitcase, completely oblivious to the tension that hung in the air. I'll get that," I said, my voice slightly shaky as I made my way to the door. I opened it to find Jake standing there, a casual smile on his face, holding a small plant that looked like it had just been plucked from his garden. "Hey, Sarah, I just wanted to return this," he said, holding out the plant. "I thought it might brighten up your space." "Thanks, Jake. That's really thoughtful of you," I replied, feeling a rush of warmth. Just then, Tom walked up behind me, and I felt my heart race again. "Hey, Jake, good to see you." Tom greeted him with a friendly clap on the shoulder. "Just got back from my trip. How about you come in for a drink?" Sure. I'd love to," Jake replied, his eyes darting to mine for a brief moment. And I could feel the electricity in the air. My heart sank slightly as I realized the complications this would bring. As Jake stepped inside, I felt trapped between my husband and him. The casual banter flowed easily between Tom and Jake, but I could feel the tension rising. I busied myself in the kitchen, pouring 3 glasses of wine, hoping it would ease the atmosphere. "Sarah, tell me about your week," Tom said, his eyes sparkling with genuine interest. I smiled tightly, trying to muster words that didn't betray the storm swirling inside me. "Oh, just the usual. Cleaned the house, caught up on some reading," I replied, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. The truth was, the usual felt painfully drab compared to the thrill Jake brought into my life. As the evening wore on, I sat between them listening to their stories and laughter. I could see the way Jake's eyes sparkled when he spoke, the way his smile lit up his face. and it made my heart flutter. Yet here I was, pretending to be someone I wasn't, playing the part of the devoted wife while my heart danced to a different tune. "Sarah, you should come out with us next time," Jake said, shooting me a quick, playful glance. "I know this great little bar downtown. It would be fun." Tom chimed in. "Yeah, we should all go. It would be a nice change of pace for you, Sarah." I nodded, but inside, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. "Sure, that sounds fun," I managed to say, though I knew that the thought of being alone with Jake made my stomach twist in both excitement and dread. As the night progressed, I caught glimpses of Jake's playful nature, mixed with an undeniable tension that electrified the air around us. I could feel his eyes lingering on me, and every time our gazes met, it felt like a silent conversation was unfolding, filled with unspoken words. When Tom excused himself to take a phone call, I felt a rush of panic. Jake turned to me, his expression softening. "You okay?" he asked quietly, concern etched across his face. "I'm fine," I lied, though my heart raced. "Just a little overwhelmed." "Yeah, I get that. It's a lot to handle," he said, his voice low, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made my breath hitch. Just then, Tom returned, oblivious to the moment that had just passed between us. "Everything good?" he asked, taking a seat next to me. "Yeah, all good," I said, forcing a smile, even as I felt the walls closing in around me. The evening continued, but the tension remained thick, palpable, and I was left feeling caught between two worlds, one that felt safe and familiar, and another that promised thrill and uncertainty. As I glanced at Jake, I could see the desire mirrored in his eyes, and in that moment, I realized just how trapped I truly felt. The house was enveloped in silence, save for the faint tick of the clock in the living room. Tom had fallen asleep on the couch, his gentle snores a reminder of the normalcy I was desperately trying to cling to. But my mind was racing. I glanced at my phone, heart pounding as I considered the implications of what I was about to do. My fingers hovered over the screen, and before I could overthink it, I sent a message to Jake. "Can we talk?" The response was almost immediate. "Where?" "The park. See you in 10. The thrill of the secret meeting sent a rush of adrenaline through me. I knew I was stepping into dangerous territory, but the thought of Jake's warm smile, his effortless charm, was intoxicating. I slipped on my coat, careful not to make any noise, and quietly slipped out the door. The cool night air hit me, invigorating and alarming all at once. The park was still and quiet as I arrived, moonlight casting silvery shadows on the ground. I spotted Jake leaning against a tree, his silhouette striking against the backdrop of the night. My heart raced as I approached, uncertainty washing over me. "Hey," he said, a smile breaking across his face as he stepped closer. "I wasn't sure you would come." "I almost didn't," I admitted, biting my lip. "But I couldn't stop thinking about you." Jake took a step closer, his eyes searching mine. "What do you want, Sarah?" His voice was low, almost a whisper, sending shivers down my spine. "I don't know," I replied, the honesty of my admission shocking me. "I just feel alive when I'm with you." He stepped even closer, his breath warm against my skin. "Then let's not think about anything else. Just this moment." Before I could process what was happening, he leaned in, capturing my lips with his. The kiss was electric, igniting a fire deep within me. It was a collision of yearning and desperation, the world around us fading into a blur. I melted into him, my hands finding their way to his hair, pulling him closer, as if we were the only two people in existence. But just as the kiss deepened, reality crashed back around me, heavy and suffocating. My heart raced, not just from desire, but from panic. I pulled back, breathless, my hands trembling. "Jake, we can't." Why not? He interrupted, his voice laced with frustration. What's stopping us? Tom, I breathed, the weight of my husband's name hanging in the air. I can't do this to him. I can't betray him like that. Jake ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in his features. You're not happy with him, Sarah. You've told me that. Why keep pretending? I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, a tumult of emotions swirling within me. I don't know what I want, I admitted, my voice breaking. I just know that I gesture between us. This feels wrong. Does it? He challenged softly, stepping closer once more. Or does it feel like freedom? The question hung in the air, heavy and profound. I took a step back, shaking my head, as if to dispel the thoughts swirling in my mind. I need to go, I finally said, my voice trembling. I can't do this. Sarah, wait. Jake reached for my hand, but I pulled away, panic rising within me. I turned and rushed back toward my car, my heart pounding in my chest as I fought against the tears threatening to spill. The thrill of the kiss lingered on my lips, but it felt tainted now, coated with guilt and confusion. I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking as I unlocked the door and slipped inside. As I drove home, the weight of my choices pressed down on me like a suffocating blanket. My mind raced with the implications of what had just happened. I didn't know where this path would lead, but I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, teetering between loyalty and desire, love and lust. What had I done? What was I becoming? The questions echoed in my mind, and as I finally pulled into the driveway, I knew one thing for certain. I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room. I sat on the edge of my bed, still replaying the events of last night in my mind. The kiss with Jake felt electric, igniting something within me that I hadn't felt in years. But the thrill quickly faded, replaced by a weight of guilt that pressed down on my chest. I needed to confront the reality of my marriage and the emotional turmoil I had entangled myself in. I pulled on a pair of jeans and a simple sweater, the fabric feeling heavy against my skin. As I made my way to the kitchen, I avoided looking at the empty side of the bed. Tom would be home from his trip soon, and I needed to be honest with him about how I was feeling. I had spent too much time avoiding the truth, and that had led me to Jake. As I poured myself a cup of coffee, my phone buzzed on the counter. My heart raced as I picked it up, expecting it to be Tom. But it was a call from Jake. A mix of excitement and dread washed over me. Should I answer? Part of me wanted to hear his voice, to relive that moment of connection. But another part warned me that this could complicate everything further. I took a deep breath and swiped to answer. Hello. Sarah. Jake's voice came through, a blend of urgency and hesitation. I need to talk to you. It's important. My stomach dropped. What is it? There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear him take a deep breath. I didn't want to tell you this over the phone, but I think you deserve to know. I've been seeing someone you know. My heart raced as I gripped the counter, bracing myself for what came next. Who? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It's Mia, he said softly. The world around me tilted, and I felt the air leave my lungs. My best friend? My mind raced, trying to piece together the implications of Jake's confession. You're seeing Mia? I stammered, feeling a mix of betrayal and disbelief. How long has this been going on? Months, he admitted, his voice heavy with guilt. We started talking after I moved in next door. I didn't intend for it to happen, but I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't want to hurt you. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. You didn't want to hurt me? You kissed me, Jake. And now you're telling me you've been with my best friend? How could you do this? I know, and I'm so sorry, he pleaded. I didn't mean for it to get this complicated. I care about both of you, but I had to be honest with you. I can't keep lying. I felt like the ground had been pulled from beneath me. I had been so consumed by my feelings for Jake that I hadn't even considered the implications of our connection. How could you do this to me, to her? I asked, my voice trembling. You know how much Mia means to me. I know, he replied softly, and I never wanted to hurt you. But I can't deny my feelings for her either. I didn't know how to tell you. Silence hung between us, the weight of his words settling heavily in the air. I could feel the betrayal slicing through me, a raw ache that left me feeling hollow. I need to go, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I can't do this right now. Wait, Sarah, Jake began, but I hung up before he could finish. I dropped my phone onto the kitchen table, my hands shaking. The room felt stifling, and I needed air. I stepped outside, the cool breeze hitting my face, but it did little to soothe the turmoil inside me. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, the choices before me blurred and uncertain. What was I supposed to do now? Confront Tom with the knowledge that my best friend was involved with Jake? I had to face the truth of my own feelings, the choices I had made that had led me here. I was caught in a web of betrayal, and it was suffocating. As I stood there, staring at the ground, I realized that I couldn't keep running away. I needed to confront the reality of my marriage, my friendship, and my feelings for Jake. But I also needed to prepare for the fallout that would come with those revelations. The thought of it made my stomach churn, but I knew one thing for certain: my life would never be the same again.